Yamato-Damashii. The forgotten power that fuels unstoppable energy. What if I told you that there is a force ancient, often misunderstood, and nearly forgotten that could unlock a level of energy, endurance, and inner clarity most of us have never tapped into? A concept that doesn't rely on motivation hacks, caffeine, or external validation, but instead draws from something deeper, primal, and yet highly refined. That concept is Yamato-Damashii, the spirit of Japan, but this isn't about nationalism, tradition, or culture in the narrow sense. It's about a metaphysical engine, a philosophical current that once fueled warriors, poets, and thinkers, and today has the potential to awaken a kind of unstoppable energy in you. The question is, can we resurrect this forgotten force in a modern world that's obsessed with comfort, convenience, and quick results? We have to start by understanding what Yamato-Damashii is not. It's not about blind loyalty or outdated customs. It's not about following cultural rules for the sake of heritage. Yamato-Damashii is the distilled essence of what it means to live with conviction, with unshakable will, with a sense of duty that doesn't waver in the face of pain. It is the spiritual DNA that once animated the samurai, not merely to fight, but to live and die with honor. It is the inner vow to be more than your circumstances, more than your fears, more than your excuses. At its core, Yamato-Damashii is about transcending the personal ego by aligning with something greater than self-preservation. And that alignment births energy unlike anything else.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Let me ask you something. What gives you energy when everything else is depleted? When your body is tired, your emotions are spent, and your mind is clouded, what's left? Most people think energy is a resource to be managed. But what if energy is not something you get, but something you become? Yamato-Damashii teaches us that energy is not a substance, it's a state of being. When your soul is clear, when your intention is pure, when your sense of duty is unaffected by personal gain or loss, you enter a flow that is not just physical or mental, it's spiritual. This is the forgotten power we're talking about. In today's world, we're taught to chase motivation, to seek passion, to find our why. But those concepts are unstable. Your motivation will fluctuate. Your passion will fade. Even your why will feel empty when you're exhausted or heartbroken. But Yamato-Damashii doesn't rely on emotional highs. It relies on internal commitment. It's about choosing to rise regardless of how you feel. And in that choice lies a paradox. When you no longer depend on energy to act, you start generating energy by acting anyway. You become the source. That's why people who embody this spirit often seem superhuman. They don't wait to feel ready. They move, and in moving, they awaken the very force they thought they lacked. But how do we apply this in our own lives? This isn't about adopting foreign rituals or quoting ancient texts. It's about asking yourself deeper questions. What do I stand for, even when no one is watching? What pain am I willing to endure without complaint? What am I willing to protect, even if it costs me everything? These aren't questions you answer once. They're questions you live with. And the more honestly you live them, the more access you gain to this forgotten power. Most of us are trained to think in terms of reward. We act only when there's something in it for us: money, praise, attention, comfort. But Yamato-Damashii flips that logic. It says, act because it is right, even if it costs you. Act because it is necessary, even when it's hard. Act because it's who you are, not because of what you'll get. And when you live this way, you stop needing external fuel. You can operate through fatigue, through heartbreak, through loss. Not because you're numb, but because you're aligned. The spirit carries you. There's a profound stillness at the center of this energy. It's not frantic or chaotic. It's not the hyped-up rush of dopamine. It's a deep, controlled fire. It doesn't burn to impress. It burns to endure. And in that endurance, you begin to see life differently. You stop fearing discomfort. You stop negotiating with pain. You stop waiting for things to get easier. You become the kind of person who moves forward not in spite of difficulty, but because of it. That's what Yamato-Damashii trains into you, the ability to meet life directly, without flinching. So here's the challenge. Can you live by principle, even when it's invisible to others? Can you act with honor, even when no one sees it? Can you commit to something so deeply that you no longer need motivation, just movement? That's the beginning of awakening Yamato-Damashii. It's not a one-time revelation. It's a daily practice. a devotion to fortitude, to discipline, to inner fire. And once you touch it, you'll never again rely on external energy to keep going, because you'll have become something far more powerful than motivated. You'll have become driven by soul. In the next part, we'll dive into how Yamato-Damashii transforms your relationship with suffering and why embracing pain with honor is not just admirable but essential for becoming unstoppable. Embracing the blade, how Yamato-Damashii transforms suffering into sacred power. Pain is something we're taught to avoid. From childhood, we're conditioned to flinch away from discomfort, to numb it, to medicate it, to escape it at all costs. And yet, paradoxically, every person who has ever achieved something profound, whether in battle, art, philosophy, or life itself, has done so by moving toward pain, not away from it. Yamato-Damashii, the spirit we're exploring, doesn't just accept suffering as part of life, it treats it as sacred. Because it is within suffering that your spirit is revealed. It is within pain that your character is forged. And it is through the blade of hardship that your soul is polished into something unbreakable. Let me ask you something. What is your relationship with pain? Do you run from it? Do you curse it? Or have you ever bowed to it not in defeat but in reverence? Most people live their entire lives trying to avoid pain, and in doing so, they avoid growth. But those who embody Yamato-Damashii understand something deeper. Pain is not the enemy. The fear of pain is. Because fear turns pain into suffering. Fear fragments the mind. Fear makes us small. But when you walk into pain with purpose, when you endure it knowing it's part of your evolution, it transforms from a wound into wisdom, from a punishment into preparation. The samurai understood this better than most. Their entire life was a preparation for death, not in a morbid way, but in a liberating one. If you are not afraid to die, what can truly control you? If you are not afraid to suffer, what can stop you? This wasn't about recklessness, it was about accepting the impermanence of life so completely that every moment could be lived with total integrity. Pain then was not something to avoid, it was something to honor, because it showed you what you were made of. It showed you the truth. The modern world, with all its comforts, has dulled our respect for pain. We've been told that ease is the goal, that happiness is the default, that life should be smooth if we're doing it right. But that's a lie. Ease is not the goal, meaning is. And meaning is born in the fire of adversity. Ask yourself, what is the most meaningful moment in your life? Was it easy? Or did it come through struggle, through endurance? The answer, if you're honest, is always the latter, because pain has depth. It demands your full attention. It burns away the superficial and reveals the essence. Yamato-Damashii teaches us to meet pain with posture, to face it with the spine straight, the gaze steady, the breath calm, not because we enjoy it, but because we respect it. And in that respect, we reclaim our power. Because when you choose to walk into the fire, it can no longer consume you. You walk through it. You emerge changed, sharper, clearer, stronger. Not because the pain disappeared, but because you integrated it. You learned to carry it without breaking. This is not about glorifying suffering for its own sake. It's about learning how to use it. Every scar can become a symbol of growth. Every setback can become a tool. But only if you stop resisting the pain and start learning from it. That's what Yamato-Damashii does. It reframes suffering as sacred. It teaches you to see every difficulty as a dojo, every heartbreak as a lesson, every obstacle as a gate. And when you live this way, you become very, very difficult to stop. Because the world can still hurt you, but it can no longer control you. Imagine living in such a way that pain no longer terrifies you. That when life breaks your heart, you don't collapse, you bow, you breathe, and you rise. That when everything falls apart, you don't panic, you go deeper into your discipline. That when others quit, you begin. That's what Yamato-Damashii offers. Not freedom from pain, but freedom through pain. A kind of inner liberation that makes you unstoppable, not because nothing can hurt you, but because nothing can unmake you. So ask yourself now, what pain have you been avoiding that you could be transforming? What story are you telling yourself about hardship that's keeping you weak? What would happen if you stopped running from the blade and instead embraced it as your teacher? In the next part, we'll explore how Yamato-Damashii awakens a state of flow through commitment to mastery and why discipline, far from being restrictive, is the gateway to ultimate freedom and spiritual energy. The path of mastery, why discipline becomes freedom in the world of Yamato-Damashii. In a world obsessed with shortcuts, hacks, and instant gratification, the word discipline has almost become taboo. It's seen as old-fashioned, rigid, even oppressive. People want freedom, spontaneity, and ease. But here's the paradox that Yamato-Damashii teaches us: discipline is not the enemy of freedom, it is the only path to it. Without discipline, you are not free, you are a slave to impulse, to mood, to distraction. True freedom is not doing whatever you want. True freedom is having the power to do what you must when it matters most, regardless of how you feel. And that power is built, moment by moment, through devotion to a path, the path of mastery. Yamato-Damashii reveres mastery, not because it's impressive, but because it's sacred. To practice one thing with complete presence day after day, year after year, is not merely to improve, it is to transform. It is to etch your soul into the act, whether it's swordsmanship, calligraphy, leadership, or simply living with integrity. Mastery is the external expression of inner alignment, and discipline is the vehicle that takes you there. It is the repeated decision to show up, especially on the days when you don't want to, especially when no one is watching, especially when no reward is guaranteed. Let me ask you something. What do you consistently do when no one is forcing you? What practice have you committed to so deeply that it has become part of your identity? If you can't answer that, you haven't yet touched the path of mastery. And until you do, your energy will always be inconsistent. Your confidence will always be fragile. Your sense of purpose will always be negotiable. But when you choose one thing and you give yourself to it fully, you begin to tap into a current that most people never access. You stop chasing motivation and start running on meaning. Discipline, in the world of Yamato-Damashii, is not about control for its own sake. It is about creating a container strong enough to hold your full potential. Think of it like a sword. A blade without a sheath is dangerous and unstable. A spirit without discipline is the same. Discipline is the sheath that allows your power to have direction. Without it, your energy spills. With it, your energy sharpens. You don't become less of yourself, you become more of yourself, but focused, intentional, and precise. And here's the deeper truth: discipline creates flow. Not the kind of flow state people chase through dopamine loops and productivity apps, but a deeper flow, the alignment between your inner world and your outer action. When discipline becomes your rhythm, life stops feeling chaotic. You no longer debate with yourself. You no longer waste energy deciding whether or not to do what you said you would do. You simply do. And in that consistency, you enter a kind of spiritual momentum. Your actions start to carry weight. Your word starts to mean something. Your presence begins to radiate certainty. This is the energy of Yamato-Damashii, quiet, unwavering, relentless. It does not shout. It does not seek applause. It does not need permission. It moves like water, soft but unstoppable. And it is cultivated through the daily devotion to the smallest of tasks. The way you rise in the morning, the way you train, eat, speak, carry yourself. Discipline turns these mundane acts into sacred rituals. Every decision becomes an offering. Every action becomes a declaration. I am not here to drift. I am here to become. So reflect on this. What would your life look like if you stopped waiting for motivation and started living by intention? What would change if you honored your commitments as if they were sacred vows? What kind of energy would you unlock if you treated discipline not as a burden, but as a gift, the key that opens the door to your highest self? That's what Yamato-Damashii offers. Not a quick fix, not a motivational high, but a path, a way of life, a rhythm of devotion that, over time, turns ordinary people into forces of nature. Not because they are perfect, but because they are committed. And in a world full of noise, the person who moves with quiet discipline becomes a beacon of clarity. In the final part, we'll explore how Yamato-Damashii isn't just a personal philosophy, but a way to uplift others, lead with silent power, and leave a legacy that speaks long after your voice is gone. Legacy of the silent flame, how Yamato-Damashii becomes the soul of leadership and impact. There is a kind of leadership so quiet, so unwavering, that most people don't recognize it until long after it's gone. It doesn't shout. It doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't command with ego. And yet, it leaves an imprint deeper than any title, louder than any speech. This is the leadership born of Yamato-Damashii, the forgotten power that doesn't seek to dominate but to elevate. It leads not through charisma, but through character. Not through persuasion, but through presence. Not through force, but through example. And in a world desperate for direction, this kind of leadership becomes a flame others gather around, not because they're told to, but because they're drawn to its warmth. We often think leadership is about followers, but Yamato-Damashii flips that completely. It teaches us that the true leader is the one who would lead even if no one followed. Why? Because their path is not dependent on approval. Their values are not contingent on applause. They are driven by an inner vow, promise to themselves to live by principle, to act with honor, to serve something greater than their own comfort. And that vow is what gives their presence weight. It's what makes people listen even in silence. It's what makes their impact last even after they're gone. Let me ask you this: what are you building that will outlive you? What part of your character will echo in the lives of others long after your voice is silent? These questions aren't meant to be grandiose, they're meant to wake you up. Because whether you realize it or not, your life is already leaving a trail. Your actions, your discipline, your choices, they ripple outward. People are watching you, even when you don't notice. Not always with their eyes, but with their instincts. They feel when you are grounded. They sense when you are real. And that authenticity, more than any speech or strategy, becomes your legacy. Yamato-Damashii teaches us that the highest form of leadership is service without ego. It's not about being in the spotlight, it's about being the foundation others can stand on. It's about being the one who holds the line when others fall, who keeps their word when it's hard, who chooses integrity over image. That kind of leadership doesn't require a platform. It only requires commitment. And when you live that way, you don't have to convince people to trust you, they just do. Because trust is the natural result of consistency and truth. But this legacy goes beyond people. It's also about your relationship with the world itself. Yamato-Damashii calls us to live in harmony with nature, with time, with the unseen forces that shape our destiny. It asks us to be stewards, not consumers, to leave behind not just memories, but meaning, not just impressions, but impact. And to do that, we must live with intentions so deeply ingrained that even our smallest actions carry the weight of our soul. Imagine living in such a way that your silence calms a room, that your presence gives others strength, that your discipline becomes a mirror, showing others what they too are capable of, that your life becomes a quiet revolution not through noise, but through consistency, honor, and truth. That is what Yamato-Damashii offers. Not fame, not riches, but something far more valuable, a legacy that cannot be erased. So I ask you one final time, what will your silent flame ignite in others? Will you choose to live in a way that demands nothing but inspires everything? Will you walk the path not for recognition, but because it is right? Because in the end, Yamato-Damashii is not about being remembered. It's about becoming unforgettable, not through what you say, but through what you are. Through how you move, through how you endure, through how you serve. And when you live that way, your energy, the unstoppable energy of discipline, of suffering transformed, of mastery honored, becomes immortal. That is the forgotten power. That is the spirit of Yamato-Damashii. And it's not history. It's not myth. It's you waiting to awaken.